On Thursday, the troupe Krivoye Zerkalo arrived in Istanbul on tour. Low-grade Kremlin jesters staged a comedy called Unpeaceful Non-Negotiations or the Humiliation of Red Uncle Sam. This traveling theater was led by the 47-chromosome pseudo-historian Medinsky.
And one more thing about genetics. A statement by Minister of Culture Vladimir Medinsky caused quite a stir in the scientific community. In an interview with the California newspaper Russian Life, Medinsky suggested that what saved the Russian nation from disappearing from the face of the earth, like the Scythians and Sarmatians, was an extra chromosome, that is the 47.
Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, who also arrived in Turkey, called the Russian delegation a sham. Honestly, what kind of peace or anything at all can you negotiate with deputy assistants in charge of making coffee?
I don't officially know the level of the Russians yet, but from what we see, it looks more like a sham level.
Zelenskyy's reaction greatly outraged the Kremlin ghouls. The half-liter press attaché of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Zakharova, reeking of booze, rushed to defend the high status of her half-baked negotiators.
Who uses the word sham? A clown? A loser? A person with completely unknown educational background, talking about people who not only have basic education but also academic degrees.
What do you think? How many promille of alcohol does she have in her system? Is it more than the US national debt or not? Obviously, the occupiers haven't sobered up since last Sunday, trying to figure out how to respond to Zelenskyy's proposal to meet Putin in person in Istanbul. The Kremlin dummies were straining their brains, trying to figure out how to save the Führer's face from disgrace. It's funny that the pale geostrategist dug the hole himself, stuck the stakes in it himself, smeared them with shit himself, and fell into it himself. In response to the proposal from Ukraine, Europe, and the US to establish a 30-day ceasefire starting May 12, Putin appeared on air at night and pompously announced that instead, he proposed holding negotiations in Istanbul.
Dear colleagues, we propose that the Kiev authorities resume the negotiations that they interrupted at the end of 2022. To resume direct negotiations, and I want to emphasize without any preconditions. We propose to start without delay already next Thursday, May 15, in Istanbul.
It's clear what Putin was counting on. To start endless talks about talks without stopping the fighting, dragging out the peace process as much as possible by putting forward impossible demands. In principle, this tactic had worked before with Trump's arrival. Empty talk, just like the terrorist shelling of Ukraine, never stopped. And this time, Trump once again gladly played along with the Kremlin, forgetting his own ultimatum to punish Russia for refusing a ceasefire. Donald Trumpovich put forward a demand for Kyiv to immediately go to pseudo-negotiations in Istanbul. And here, whether consciously or not, Trump helped spring the trap on Putin. Zelenskyy quickly responded to the American comrade's call and accepted the challenge, saying he would personally wait for Putin in Istanbul.
I will be in Turkey on Thursday, May 15th. I am waiting for Putin in Turkey.
This initiative was supported by the US, the Europeans, and even China. Everyone was shouting, "Putin, come on, suitcase train station, Istanbul!" The president of Brazil even personally flew to Moscow to persuade the war criminal not to embarrass himself and to come to the negotiations. But Putin hid from Lula under the bed, and the Brazilian leader, after waiting for him for almost 4 hours, flew far away from the capital of the world's panopticon.
Brazilian President Lula da Silva arrived in Moscow and was supposed to meet with Putin this evening. The meeting promised to be far from pleasant for the Kremlin, since before his departure, the president had promised that he would pressure Putin to fly to Istanbul for a meeting with Zelenskyy.
The Kremlin was clearly at a loss. For the first time, they couldn't even manage to lie coherently. Moscow was silent for 3 days. Are they going or not? Is it Putin or not Putin? Russia hasn't seen such a diplomatic international embarrassment since Yeltsin's drunken antics. The leader of a nuclear country that supposedly aspires to world dominance wasn't just afraid to go to the negotiations he himself proposed, can't even find the words to clearly explain why he won't attend.
The young girl who was diligently searching for something for...
Although it's obvious to everyone why Putin refused to come to Istanbul. Because he was absolutely terrified. First of all, he's afraid of being personally humiliated by Zelenskyy. By a man whom Putin has never taken seriously. He's afraid of being humiliated by someone who was performing in KVN when Putin was already president.
I'm going to Russia specifically to shoot some footage.
Secondly, Putin is afraid to be photographed next to the presidents of Ukraine and the United States. He knows that the Z patriots and Russian nationalists, whom he personally nurtured, will never forgive him for that. For them, negotiations with the Washington Regional Committee and with a non-existent Ukraine are national betrayal, a backroom deal. In Russia, even the mere mention of any direct negotiations with Kyiv has already led to calls to take up arms and march on Moscow. Our struggle continues. On the eve of a possible signing of agreements to freeze the conflict, here is an address to the servicemen who are currently carrying out missions as part of the special military operation on the territory of Ukraine. While the war with an external enemy is ongoing, our criminal authorities are waging war against the interests of the country and deliberately against the Russian people, causing damage to Russian statehood that is incomparably greater than what Ukraine and NATO are doing. Think carefully before you voluntarily disarm at the end of hostilities. There may be no other options. If we give up our weapons, we give up our country. And thirdly, the Russian Führer simply got scared for his life. He is terrified that he will be eliminated. They might take advantage of such a good opportunity to stop all wars on Earth, especially since the head of the SBU, Malyuk, flew to Istanbul. It's unclear why Putin is so worried about his life. After all, he himself said he would go to heaven. Kiva can confirm that it's possible to live there.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation. He has risen.
In the end, Putin once again proved that he is a cowardly cockroach. He didn't even have the guts to personally come forward and announce that he was refusing to go. Instead, the pale toadstool was covered by an old nag.
At first, Zelenskyy was making some statements demanding that Putin show up in person. Well, he's a pathetic person, but everyone understands that except probably himself and those who are pulling his strings.
The president of Ukraine, of course, did not meet with the Kremlin's ridiculous negotiators. Zelenskyy spoke with Erdogan and then flew to Albania. But solely out of respect for Trump and the Turkish side, he agreed to send a Ukrainian delegation to meet with the orcs. It was headed by Defense Minister Umerov.
We are ready for this. The delegation will be sent. It has already been sent.
The meeting lasted 2 hours and, as expected, did not lead to any peace. But the Russians realized they urgently needed to learn Ukrainian because the Ukrainian side sent the Russian dialect packing right after the insane demands of the Rashists.
Who are you people? I didn't invite you. Go.
According to insider information, Medinsky threatened that Russia is ready to fight forever. I wonder, unlike Medinsky and Putin, are the Russian Yemelias in the trenches ready to fight forever? Or at least for another year? Something tells us it would be easier for them to go to Moscow and spend a couple of days fighting with the riot police on the streets of the so-called capital.
And fighting the way we do, you could even get rid of a second wave of mobilized troops in exactly the same way.
Wear them down? Yes.
Yes. On the other hand, those who have been fighting for the fourth year, well, people are just exhausted.
The result of Istanbul 2.0, to put it mildly, was not impressive. As a result of this meeting, they agreed on the possibility of holding another meeting. But that's not certain.
We mutually agreed that each respective side would meticulously present its comprehensive vision of a truly possible future ceasefire, carefully outlining it in considerable detail. After such a detailed vision is thoroughly presented, we firmly believe it is entirely appropriate here. Was also mutually agreed upon to diligently continue our ongoing negotiations.
Blah blah blah, taken to the extreme. Even when the Ukrainians directly proposed a personal meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin, the Russian matryoshkas replied that they would think about it. Everyone has already seen how long and painfully they can think in the Kremlin before Istanbul. Most likely, Putin will once again hold the thermometer up to the light bulb, say he has a fever, and hide under the bed. They blew it. The only positive result of these so-called peace negotiations is the prisoner exchange, 1,000 for 1,000. Only for this was it worth enduring 2 hours of the bleating of war criminals.
A truly significant and large-scale prisoner exchange is set to take place. 1,000 individuals for 1,000 others.
The ongoing negotiations in Istanbul did not lead to a complete cessation of hostilities, but once again demonstrated to the entire world that Russia has no intention of halting its brutal and senseless war and is prepared to keep killing until it is ultimately compelled to surrender its weapons.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.